us out around what the real impacts around urban living and impacts for communities are. And I welcome to the floor Andy Foster from Wellington City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got 4 slides. 3 of them are going to be very quick, and one of them we're going to spend the time on. So the first one of them is something nobody's really touched on, which is a bit of an elephant in the room, which is there are more of us, and we're filling the planet up fairly fast. And of course, the more of us there are, the more we tend to use. Which way am I going to go forward? No, I'm just saying that is an issue. So Wellington bona fides. This is census data. This is Wellington City as a comparison with the rest of the country, 2001 and 2013 census periods. So for every 100 people who went to work or to education in a car, those are the numbers of people who went by public transport, walked or cycled. So Wellington City way ahead of anybody else, and that gap has actually grown. I'm sure what Auckland will start doing is catching up with the huge investment that's being made there, particularly in public transport. Right, so this is the one I want to spend some time on, because there's a lot of co-benefits in here as well. So first of all, urban form. Urban form is absolutely critical to transport choice, and it's critical to so many other things. We think we've got a great central city. It's the area which, as a part of our region, is growing by far the fastest. It's growing faster than the Canberra area, it's been growing faster than the Greenfields area. We think that's a great thing because it adds to economic vitality. It makes the city much better, but also does some pretty good things in terms of emissions and transport. 2 challenges in that area. One is that we have a government whose view is we want to build big roads and encourage people to commute from long distances. And secondly, their best solution for cheap housing is to open up new greenfields areas. And both of those, of course, are antithetical to, in our view, good urban form. Carbon sinks, again, we've got co-benefits there. So Wellington City has now 4,000 hectares of reserves, and there's a lot of private land which is also regenerating as well. That obviously takes up carbon, but it's also got huge other benefits for biodiversity, recreation, landscape, etc. Investing in rail and bus priority. In 1993, rail and bus hit a low of 23 million passenger users a year. We're roughly double that now. Train use is still going up. Bus use is reasonably flat, but hopefully the initiatives which are being taken at the moment push that up further. Cycleway development, we've been working pretty hard in that area as well. It's not the only thing we're doing in terms of transport. It's hard work. The number of people on bikes in Wellington has more than doubled, and it's gone up every year since 1986. It's gone up like that. Most of the rest of the region's gone like that, or even like that, over that entire period of time. That's hard work as well, because there's a lot of public opposition there too. Actually, I should have said this public opposition is an issue to the urban form, because people don't like this. They're not in my backyard. People don't like that sort of intensification around them sometimes. A pedestrian-friendly environment, that's just an ongoing piece of work that we're doing just to try and make sure that, particularly the central city, but also access to bus stops, access to train stations, access to facilities is easier and more attractive. So we want to keep on working on that. Things like speed limits as an example of something we will do to support that. Car share has been mentioned earlier today. We're working at the moment, we're trialling with now 4 car share operators, very early days yet, and developing a car share policy which will come back to my committee in a couple of months' time. And we're hoping that, as Moana mentioned earlier, that every car share car takes something like 15 cars off the road. That's really good value, especially for people who want to live downtown or for businesses downtown. That's an excellent way of getting access to a car on those very rare occasions you want one. Electric vehicles, again, early days. We've said, look, we'd like to get some of our council fleet to become EVs. Probably the big gain, though, is to work with some of the providers of electric vehicle charging technology and put that into some of our street areas. So we haven't had that conversation yet. We will do that within the next few days. Pricing mechanism, I've got that in twice for some reason. This is an area which the government could really help us with. There's those really politically popular things like congestion pricing. We don't want everybody all trying to come into the city all at the same time in one person per vehicle. That's bad news. Also, long stay parking levies. So our parking arrangements are all completely round the wrong way in terms of pricing. We want people to come in and shop. They don't need to be very long, but the parking arrangements in private sector buildings penalise them. We want to flip that around. So having a levy on those would be a very useful thing. The other thing is development contributions. Councils like us are allowed to charge development contributions. So if you impose a lot of cost on the system, transport, infrastructure, etc., we can charge you for that. Regional council can't, and NZTA can't. So again, there's a deficiency in the mechanisms that are there to provide to send a true cost message to people. We've got some opportunities in reviewing our parking arrangements as well, so we're going to be working on that too. And the last two things I wanted to mention, they're car ownership and income. Wellington City has the highest income in the country. We have the lowest equal car ownership rate in the country with Gisborne. So car ownership does not equal wealth. In fact, people are choosing not to own cars in increasing numbers in Wellington. And the last one I wanted to mention is, of course, we had some pretty pictures of wind farms, and they're wonderful looking things. So we've got West Wind and Mill Creek on our doorstep. And my answer to people who said, oh, I don't like the look of those things, has always been to say, I'd much rather have a wind farm there than know that some wild river somewhere has been dammed. That's the Mokahinui River, and I'm very pleased that Meridian backed away from that one, because we don't want to save the world by destroying parts of it. And that's a really beautiful river, and we don't want to ruin that. So we've got a great hydro system, but we've got to be very careful, because rivers, their energy might be sustainable, but the river itself isn't. So I'll finish there.